The Kethera had been watching humanity for 47 of our years before they made contact, and in all that time they had produced precisely one conclusion. We were interesting in the way that a wounded animal is interesting, unpredictable, occasionally dangerous, and ultimately something to be managed. Sergeant Dara Ose did not know this when she received her orders. She was sitting in the cramped operations bay of Outpost Vance, eating reconstituted protein paste from a foil pouch, when Lieutenant Commander Hargrove dropped the transfer slip on her console without preamble. She read it twice. "Babysitting," she said. "Ambassador Escort and Cultural Liaison," Hargrove said, which was the same thing, dressed in cleaner clothes. Ozzy set down the protein paste. Across the bay, Corporal Yusuf Tamba was pretending to review inventory manifests. She telltale to stillness of his shoulders that he was listening. Beside him, Specialist Rena Volkov had stopped pretending entirely and was watching with the frank, open curiosity that was either her greatest professional liability or her most essential survival trait, depending on the week. "The three of us," said. "You, Tamba, and Volkov, yes. Plus Mickelson from engineering, Mickelson." Ose tasted the name. Why Mickelson? Because the last time a human delegation met with a Kethara dignitary without an engineer on staff, there was an incident involving a power coupling and 17 pages of diplomatic correspondence. Grove straightened the stack of transfer slips he wasn't holding. "Don't have another incident." "Sir." Osi looked back at the paper. "Respect." "Denied. I haven't said anything yet. I know what you're about to say, and the answer is no. This is not a slight against your record. This is a strategic deployment of your specific competencies." He paused. "You're good with people, Osi. Even alien ones. I've met exactly one Kethara. Yes, and you didn't start a war. You're practically our leading expert." He left before she could respond to that, which was almost certainly deliberate. The Kethara vessel made orbit at 0600 and sent its diplomatic shuttle down at 0800 because the Kethara kept their own time and had not been particularly interested in syncing to Earth standard. Despite 14 months of joint scheduling negotiations, the shuttle was a beautiful thing, all curved surfaces and bioluminescent panels that shifted color in response to atmospheric pressure, like a living creature breathing through its skin. Volkov took 11 photographs before Osi told her to put the camera away. They waited on the landing platform, in the thin mountain cold of the Peruvian station. 4 humans in dress grays, breath-making small clouds in the air. Mickelson was tall and fair-haired, and radiated the particular calm of someone who had spent so much time surrounded by things that could kill him that he had simply made peace with it. Tamba was broad and quiet, and had a habit of cataloging exits when he entered any space, which Osi had watched him do even here, on an open-air platform with no walls. "They're going to be better than us at everything," Volkov said, not unhappily. "Probably," Osi agreed. "Does that bother you?" Osi thought about it honestly. "No," she said, and meant it. The shuttle settled. Its door reached open. Jari stepped out, and she was not what any of them had expected. The Kethara in diplomatic photographs and official feeds were presented in their formal state. Tall, blue-black skin that shifted iridescence in certain lights, cranial ridge structures that indicated age and standing within their caste system, robes layered in the precise geometric folds of status. The image showed beings of careful, composed authority. Jari wore a modified version of this. The robes were there, but she'd tucked one layer through her belt in a way that was clearly functional, rather than ceremonial. And she was looking at everything at once in the rapid scanning way of someone who had arrived somewhere genuinely interesting. She was young. Osi had been told this, that she was the youngest of the Kethara research cadre, barely past their equivalent of adolescence. And it showed not as inexperience but as velocity. She moved through the world at a different speed than the adult Kethara in the photographs. Her attendant, an older diplomat named Eth Savar, was everything the photographs had promised. He stood 3 steps behind Zari and watched the humans the way one watches weather. Jari stopped in front of Osi and tilted her head approximately 20 degrees to the left, which, according to the cultural briefings, indicated curiosity without aggression. "You are the escort unit," she said. Translation device, worn as a ring on one of her 4 fingers, rendered her words into English with a faint harmonic undertone, chord under a melody. You are also carrying sidearms, which is interesting considering that this is a diplomatic engagement, but I have been told that humans often carry weapons recreationally, so I will not take offense. We don't carry them recreationally, Osi said. Carry them professionally. Sergeant Dara Osi. These are Corporal Tamba, Specialist Volkov, and Specialist Mikkelsen. Jari looked at each of them in turn. Her eyes were a deep amber with a second pupil that dilated independently of the first, and the effect of her full attention was somewhat like being scanned by a machine that had learned to be personable about it. Good, she said. I have 17 objectives for this visit, and I would prefer to begin immediately. The first is to assess the field repair capacity of a standard human infantry unit under emergency conditions. Could you arrange for an emergency? Behind Osi, she heard Tamba make a sound that was not quite a laugh. Let's start with breakfast, Osi said. The first 3 hours were humbling in the specific way that only genuine superiority can be humbling, without malice, without performance, simply undeniable. They took Jari to the station's training bay, because Volkov had suggested it, and because it seemed neutral, a place with clear purpose and physical challenge, a chance to see what they were all capable of, without the fraught theater of a briefing room. The bay's obstacle course was calibrated to human peak performance. The kind of thing that a decorated soldier, with a good sleep and good breakfast, clear in about 6 minutes. Jari looked at it for 30 seconds. Then she cleared it in 4 minutes and 12 seconds, and she did it wrong. Or rather, she did it differently, finding angles and grip points that the human designers had not anticipated, using the structure of the course, the way water finds the fastest path downhill. She finished without appearing to be particularly winded. Second pupil was tracking the exit even as she stepped off the final platform. Tamba, who had cleared it in 6:08 on his best day, stood very still. Volkov said, "Huh." Jari looked at the course, then at them, then tilted her head again. "Is there a longer version?" "We can add sections," Mikkelsen said. They added sections. Jari cleared those too. Osi watched this happen and noticed something. Shh, Jari was not gloating. She wasn't performing. She was studying the course the way she studied everything else, with that rapid scanning attention, and what she seemed to be looking for was the logic of it. Why humans had built it this way, what it revealed about how they understood movement and effort and the body's limits. After her 4th run, she sat on the platform beside Volkov and said, "You build your training tools at exactly your own limit. Not below, not above. Why? Because if it's too easy, it doesn't train you. If it's too hard, you can't learn. We build ours calibrated to the next generation's anticipated capacity. The goal is to stretch towards something you cannot yet do." Volkov considered this. That would be really demoralizing. Many of us find it clarifying, Jari said. How many? A pause. The ones who survived the training program. Volkov looked at Osi. Os looked at the ceiling. It was at lunch, station mess. Deliberately ordinary. Osi's deliberate choice. That things shifted. Mikkelsen was eating with one hand and reading from a technical tablet with the other, as he always did, because Mikkelsen treated eating as a maintenance task rather than an experience. Jari had been given a filtered nutrient pack from the Kethara shuttle's supplies. She kept glancing at what the humans were eating, with an expression that Osi was beginning to read as something close to curiosity and something close to wistfulness. "You can try it," Osi said. "We have allergy profiles from your medical clearance. It would be considered inappropriate for someone of my standing to eat common food in a Fortin Oaf installation," Jari said. "By whose definition?"
HFYs.
Osiwe glanced at the older diplomat, who was seated at a separate table and eating his own nutrient pack with the practiced efficiency of someone who had decided long ago that experience was not worth the complication. "Ethsavar isn't eating with us," Osi said. A beat. Then Jari took a spoonful of Tamba's rice. Tamba watched this without expression. He was very good at that. "This is interesting," Jari said. "It's jollof rice," Tamba said. "My mother's recipe, more or less. The less is because I can't get the smoked herring out here." "What's herring?" "A fish. You eat fish." "We eat almost anything," Tamba said, with a kind of weary pride. Jari ate another spoonful. Osi could see her thinking. The Cathara have strict dietary protocols because our digestive systems have a narrow tolerance range. Eat what we eat, and we do not experiment. She looked at the spoon. It has layers. The smoke underneath even without the fish. How do you build layered flavor? Time, Tamba said. Mostly. And paying attention. Jari looked at him with her full double pupil regard. You are more thoughtful than your briefing file suggested. My briefing file probably said infantry corporal. It said competent logistical support, which, I now understand, is either an underestimation or a euphemism. She returned the spoon. Thank you for the rice. There's more, Tamba said. She took more. In the afternoon, Jari disappeared. Truly disappeared. Osi had the tracker feed up on her wrist panel, the diplomatic requirement that all visitors maintain a passive location ping, and the ping was moving steadily north-northwest. But she hadn't told anyone she was going, and Ethsavar, who had been briefed to keep her in designated areas, was still in the mess hall composing a report. She's heading for the port, Mikkelsen said, reading the feed over Osi's shoulder. I know. Shh. The tanker that came in this morning is still in the process of offloading. Something went wrong with one of the coupling manifolds. I know that too. Osi pulled up the harbor report on her other panel. The tanker, an old ore carrier, the kind that had been retrofitted 14 times and was held together as much by institutional memory as engineering, had been listing since EU930. A seal had failed in the lower cargo compartment. Nothing catastrophic yet, but the failure point was spreading. She's going to try to fix it, Kukov said, with the tone of someone watching a very interesting experiment. She's going to try to fix it alone, Osi said, which was a different thing. They moved. The port was everything that the station's clean lines were not. Industrial and salt-scared, smelling of rust and diesel and the particular cold of deep water on a gray day. The tanker was vast and low in the water, its hull streaked with the work of years. Osi could see where the listing had pushed the cargo against one side, the deck raked at an angle that was not supposed to exist. Jari was already inside. She had gone in through a maintenance access port. She'd opened. Correctly, efficiently, in approximately 40 seconds according to the harbor camera feed. And she was working her way toward the failing seal through the crew corridors, which were flooded to knee depth with cold seawater and getting deeper. Bracelet interfaces with Ketharatech, Mikkelsen said, pulling up the diagnostics on his tablet as they suited up in the harbor office. She'll be running repair protocols through it. The seal is a human manufacture, but the bracelet has universal translation for mechanical systems. If she can seal it from the inside, she probably can. The question is whether the corridor holds long enough. There's a secondary stress fracture in Bulkhead 7 that isn't on any of the repair orders because nobody's looked at it recently. He turned the tablet so Osi could see. If that goes while she's in there, she's trapped. Trapped and wet and without atmosphere support if the lower compartment floods. Osi looked at Tamba. Tamba was already pulling on waders. Remain calm, Volkov said to no one in particular while visibly not remaining calm. I am calm, Osi said. You're doing that thing where your voice goes flat. That's what calm sounds like. They went in. The corridor was cold in the way that only enclosed seawater spaces are cold. Not just temperature but pressure. The weight of the water against your legs making each step cost something. The emergency lighting had kicked on, a red-orange glow that turned everything the color of old fire. Osi moved point, Tamba behind her, Volkov with the emergency toolkit, Mikkelsen with the structural display. The tracker put Jari 30 meters ahead and below. They found her at the junction of corridors 5 and 7, and the situation was exactly what Mikkelsen had predicted, and a little worse than that. The secondary fracture in Bulkhead 7 had propagated. The wall was singing, was the sound metal makes when it is preparing to do something irreversible. And Jari was on her knees in 60 centimeters of water, both hands pressed against the failing primary seal. Her bracelet lit up in the pattern that meant active interface, and there was blood on her left shoulder from where a piece of falling conduit had clipped her. She turned when she heard them. Her expression, best as Osi could read a Kethara face, was somewhere between relief and a specific kind of embarrassment. I have the seal at 73% stabilization, she said. If I can hold for another 4 minutes, Bulkhead 7 goes in less than 2, Mickelson said, already moving to the wall. Then I simply need to. You can't hold the seal and brace the bulkhead, OC said. Not alone. I am aware. I am recalculating. You don't need to recalculate. OC looked at Tamba. He was already moving to Jari's position, sinking to his knees in the water beside her, reading the seal with his hands, the way a person reads something they learned before they learned to read. Tell me what you're doing, he said to Jari. Without preamble, without ceremony, she told him. He listened completely. Not the polite listening of someone waiting for their turn to speak, the absolute attention of someone for whom this information was now the most important thing in the room. Okay, he said. Going to take the left quarter. You hold the right. Volkov, give me the emergency sealant from the kit. Volkov gave him the sealant. It was a human product, inelegant, chemical. The kind of thing that Coast Guard engineers used when elegant solutions were unavailable. It smelled terrible. That compound won't bond effectively to Cathara material, Jari said. It's not going on Cathara material. It's going on the hull plate on this side. Tamba looked at her. You hold your side, I'll hold mine. Behind them, Mickelson had opened a panel in Bulkhead 7 and was doing something fast and quiet with the stress fracture that OC couldn't entirely follow, because Mickelson operated in his own language when he worked, and she had learned to simply trust the output. Volkov was ankle-deep in water, holding the emergency lighting steady so everyone could see, which was not a glamorous task, and she was doing it without being asked because she understood what was needed. The corridor sang. The bulkhead groaned. Mickelson said one word, a technical word, possibly just a specific kind of profanity. It was genuinely hard to tell with him, and the groaning stopped. Not fixed, not yet, but held. Tamba and Jari held the seal. The water rose to their waists. OC stood at the junction point, watching both situations at once, making the 36 small decisions that being in command requires when you cannot directly control the outcome. Position, timing, extraction route, when to call retreat, when to let people do the thing they're doing. At 4 minutes and 11 seconds, the seal locked. Not 73%, 100. The water stopped rising. The corridor began slowly to equalize. They got out through the emergency hatch on the starboard side, one by one, into the cold harbor air. The sky had turned the color of pewter. Somewhere in the harbor, someone had finally gotten through to the Port Authority, and proper repair crews were converging. Jari sat on the dock with her knees pulled up, and her bracelet dark, because the impact with the conduit had cracked its primary interface node, and it would need to be repaired before it functioned again. She was wet and cold, and her shoulder was going to bruise magnificently, and she was looking at her hands with an expression that OC, sitting beside her, was now fairly certain she could read. It was the expression of someone revising a calculation they thought they'd already finished. You didn't need to come in after me, Jari said. I know, OC said. I had the seal at 73%. You did. If the bulkhead had held, I would have succeeded without assistance. Maybe. The probability was. She stopped. What? I was calculating the probability that the bulkhead would hold, and I did not account for the secondary fracture because I did not have the data on the secondary fracture. A pause. I made a decision on incomplete information. That happens to me. Not usually. She looked at Tamba, who was wringing water out of the sleeve of his uniform with the patience of someone who has accepted that this is simply what his afternoon is now. How did he know what I was doing quickly enough to supplement it? He listened, OC said. Told him in 11 seconds. That is not enough time to. He listened completely, OC said. There's a difference. Jari was quiet for a moment. The harbor moved around them. The repair crews, the harbor authority. Ethsaver finally arrived and making his way toward them across the dock, with the expression of someone composing 17 formal grievances. Bracelet, Mickelson said, crouching in front of Jari. He held out his hand. Can I look at it? She hesitated. It was a significant piece of Cathara technology, integrated systems, classified materials, and then she unclasped it and gave it to him. He turned it over, found the cracked node, looked at it for a long time, with the same quality of attention Tamba had given to the failing seal. I can't fix the node, he said. The material's beyond my equipment. But I can bridge the interface so you get partial function until it's properly repaired. He looked up. It'll be ugly. The bridge will be visible and it'll change how the interface responds slightly. But it'll work. How do you know it will work? You don't know, Kethera. I know the physics, he said. The physics don't change. She looked at him for a long moment. Do it, she said. He worked for 22 minutes on the dock with the tools he carried in his vest pockets, which were numerous and not entirely regulation. Repair was, as promised, ugly. A loop of human-made conductive filament bridging the cracked node, held with a kind of paste that Michelson referred to simply as the stuff, had no formal designation, but which could be found in the pockets of any competent engineer in any branch of service. He clasped the bracelet back onto Jari's wrist. The interface light came on, dimmer than before, slightly offset but on. She looked at her wrist for a long time. This was embarrassing to show to the Kethera Technical Division, she said. Probably, Michelson agreed and sat back on his heels. But it works. It works. Jari ran a quick interface check, expression going through several things quickly. Then she looked at Michelson with her full double pupil attention. Thank you, she said. It sounded, in the harmonic translation, like something meant with significant weight. It's what I do, he said. Ethsavar arrived, and there was a period of formal diplomatic tension that Osi navigated with the particular care of someone diffusing something that might explode if handled wrong. He wanted a full incident report, immediate extraction to the Kethara vessel, review of human escort protocols, and a formal apology from the station commander, in that order. Os listened to all of this. Then she said, Princess is safe. The tanker is secure. The only injury is a bruise on her left shoulder that your medical staff can treat. Everything else is paperwork, and paperwork keeps. She looked at Etsavar with the steady calm that Hargrove had tried to express as good with. People and she had always understood as simply paying attention. Give us 1 more hour. Then I'll write you any report you need. Etsavar regarded her. 1 hour, he said. I will be timing it. He withdrew to a position 12 meters away that was absolutely still watching them. Osi turned back to her team. Tomba was still wringing water out of his uniform. Volkov had found a coffee from somewhere. Osi had long since stopped trying to determine how Volkov found coffee, and was drinking it with her, eyes closed, which was her particular form of prayer. Michelson had a second piece of toast, apparently, from the same unknown source as Volkov's coffee. There were no mysteries with these two. There was only Volkov and Michelson logic, which was its own complete system. Jari was watching this. Your unit, she said to Osi. You were assigned to escort me as a, she paused, and Osi had the feeling she was choosing a word carefully. As a management task. As a diplomatic assignment, Osi said. Yes. Was not considered a prestigious post, no. But you, again the pause, you came in after me. Tomba supplemented my work without instruction, without being asked, without any assurance that it would succeed. Volkov held the lighting for 17 minutes in a flooding corridor, without anyone asking her to. Michelson repaired my bracelet with tools meant for human machinery. She looked at each of them. Why? Because you needed it, Tamba said. That's all, Jari said. That's all, Tamba said. Jari sat with that for a while. A harbor gull landed nearby and regarded them with the frank assessment of a harbor gull, which has no diplomatic agenda and considerable experience of humans, and then flew away. The Kethara believe, Jari said finally, carefully, that humanity is manageable because your technology is limited and your individual physical capability is limited. These are both accurate observations. She looked at her bracelet. What we have not modeled well is what you do in aggregate. You do when one of you needs something. We know how to cover for each other, Osi said. It's more than that. Jari shook her head. I ran your training course 4 times this morning, and I did it faster every time. But when the corridor was flooding, I did not think to ask for assistance. I calculated what I could do alone, and I optimized for that. I did not think, I did not consider. She stopped. Osi waited. I did not consider that there might be variables I was not holding, Jari said. None of us can hold all the variables, Osi said. That's why we have each other. Another silence. A long one. The kind that means something is settling into place. The debrief was a week later, and it was not what anyone had expected. Commander Hargrove sat in the station briefing room, across from the Cathara delegation, which was headed by Ethzavar and included, at her own request, Jari. Osi and her team sat along the near wall in the particular alertness of people who know they are being evaluated but are committed to appearing calm. Ethzavar delivered his assessment first. It was measured, formal, accurate in all its facts, and somewhat incomplete in its conclusions, as formal assessments tend to be. Then Jari spoke. She spoke for 11 minutes. Osi listened carefully. Because Jari had a habit of precision, and what she was saying was precise, she said, the humans had demonstrated competency in coordination under pressure. She said, the human escort team had adapted their methods in real time to supplement an unfamiliar system. Cathara technology, Cathara physiology, using only general mechanical knowledge and specific attention, she said. What had most distinguished them was not strength or speed or individual capability, she said. They had not left her. This was, Osi gathered, a more significant statement than it sounded in translation. Among the Cathara, the calculus of a mission was individual. What you could accomplish. What was within your capacity, whether the risk to the mission exceeded the acceptable threshold. The idea that you would go into a flooding corridor for someone who had arguably made a poor decision, who was not your kin, who was not even your species, who had technically been outperforming you all morning, the idea that this was simply what you did. Jari did not have a framework for this yet, and she said so. She said she was building one. Hargrove, to his credit, said nothing clever. He said, "Glad you're safe." Jari tilted her head. "That is an irrational statement," she said. "You didn't know me before this week." "We know you now," Hargrove said. Another one of those pauses. The kind that means something is changing afterward. In the corridor outside the briefing room, Jari found Osi. She had her bracelet out. She'd removed it to show the repair to the Cathara technical officer, who had been quietly appalled by the conductive filament and the stuff, and who had offered to replace it immediately with a proper unit. And Jari had said she would keep this one until she got home, which was another thing that had apparently required some documentation. She held it out. Osi looked at it. The ugly bridge of filament, the paste holding the cracked node in alignment, a functional thing that had no business being functional, held together by physics, and a specialist who trusted physics more than he trusted clean solutions. "I want to understand something," Jari said, in the corridor. "When Mikkelsen was working on the bulkhead and Tamba was at the seal, you stood at the junction point. You didn't work on either problem." "No," Osi said. "That would have registered on the Cathara assessment system as inefficiency. Command personnel not directly contributing to the task." "I was watching both tasks," Osi said. "And the third task, which was extraction if either of the other two failed. You were holding variables. I was holding variables." Jari looked at the bracelet. "We don't train for that. We train for individual excellence. The idea that a competent individual might contribute more by holding the space than by directly acting." She stopped. "Requires trusting the others completely." "Yes," Osi said, "it does. How do you build that?" "The trust." Osi looked at the bracelet in Jari's hands. At the ugly repair that worked. At the four of them, still smelling faintly of harbor water and cold and the long afternoon. "Time," she said, and paying attention. Jari was quiet for a moment. Then she clasped the bracelet back on. "I called my brother," she said. "Last night, he asked me what I had accomplished. I had told him I failed to complete a repair alone, nearly drowned, and had my bracelet fixed with a substance that doesn't have a name." "What did he say?" "He asked if I had learned something." A pause. "I told him I had learned many things. He said that was the point of the assignment." She tilted her head. "I had thought the assignment was to assess human capabilities. I don't think that was the assignment." "What do you think it was?" Jari looked at her. "Full double pupil attention, the machine that learned to be personable attention, and under it, the quick specific humanity, or whatever the Cathara word for it was. Someone very young and very intelligent encountering the outer edge of their model of the world." "I think it was to experience a team," she said. Osi nodded. "And I think I understand why humans are difficult to manage." The light in the corridor caught her iridescent skin and turned it briefly the color of deep water. "You don't optimize individually. You optimize together." The weak point in any one of you becomes the contribution of another. There is no threshold at which you are unsalvageable. As long as we have each other, OC said. Yes. Jari looked at the bracelet. As long as that. She walked back toward the shuttle bay, and Ethzavar fell into step beside her, and OC watched them go. Behind her, she could hear Tamba finishing the last of his coffee. He'd found some too, eventually, and Volkov making a note about something in her small battered notebook, and Mikkelsen opening a new technical problem on his tablet. With the particular ease of someone who loves his work, she stood there in the corridor for a moment, listening to them, her team, her variables. Then she went back to join them. The formal Cathara assessment of humanity, Revision 12C, was filed 4 months later. It was 47 pages, dense with data, and most of it was classified. The final paragraph was not classified. It read, in translation, with the harmonics stripped out, as follows. Human operational capacity cannot be assessed by individual metrics. The unit is the metric. Any analysis that isolates the human from their team is not analyzing the human. It is analyzing a fraction of a system that is only fully legible in aggregate. Proceed accordingly. Ethzavar had filed the report. The final paragraph was in Jari's handwriting. OC found out about it 3 weeks after the report was published, when Hargrove dropped a copy on her console without preamble, the way he always brought things. She read it to the end. She sat with it for a while. Then she went to the mess hall, where Tamba was making jollof rice from scratch, with the smoked herring he'd finally gotten a supply of, filling the small kitchen with smoke and salt, and the smell of something made with patience and attention. You should know, she said, that the Cathara formally revised their threat assessment of humanity today. Up or down? Up, she said, but not for the reasons they expected. Tamba nodded, turning the rice. Because of the tanker? Because of all of it. Because of the way we covered each other. Because Jari wrote something in the final assessment that took 47 pages of Cathara analysis to get to. She leaned against the counter. She said the unit is the metric. Tamba was quiet for a moment. The rice popped and shifted in the pan. That's about right, he said. Yeah, OC said. It is. She found a bowl and helped herself, and they ate together in the small kitchen with the harbor visible through the high window, gray and wide and moving, the way it always moved, indifferent and ongoing. While somewhere in high orbit, the Cathara ship turned toward home with its data and its revised calculations, and one young scientist who had arrived, expecting to study something limited, and was going home understanding something that the Cathara had not yet found a word for. The closest translation, as best the linguists could render it, was something like, the grace of being caught, or possibly, what it costs to not let go. Possibly, most accurately, the specific human thing that has no name, because they never thought they needed one. They just do it. They couldn't agree on which. Jari had been the one to suggest they might not need to.